You know how sometimes the very thing that seems, well, harmful can, in tiny controlled doses, actually become incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
Today we're diving into a medical paradox like that. It's really turning our understanding of health and healing sort of on its head.
We're talking about intermittent hypoxia conditioning, IHC for short.
Right, IHC. It's this strategy involving controlled brief exposures to reduced oxygen. Then you follow that with periods of normal or even higher oxygen.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack the surprising science behind it.
Explore its potential, which seems really wide-ranging for health and recovery.
And try to understand why sometimes less oxygen can actually heal. We'll look at the latest research, from Nobel Prize winning stuff to current trials.
And figure out the practical side of things too. Okay, let's get into this surprising science. Oxygen deficiency.
Yeah, the science is pretty compelling.
Now, when you hear hypoxia, your brain probably just screams, danger.
And, well, for good reason, usually.
Yeah, severe, prolonged lack of oxygen is dangerous, no question. It's a big part of things like obstructive sleep apnea syndrome.
Right, and it can lead to serious systemic problems, even be fatal if it's extreme.
But here's where it gets really interesting, the paradox you mentioned.
Exactly. While severe hypoxia is definitely harmful, you can actually gain incredible resilience through sublethal adaptation to low oxygen.
Sublethal adaptation.
Yeah.
So not enough to cause harm, but enough to trigger a response.
Precisely. That's the process we call hypoxic conditioning, or intermittent hypoxia conditioning, IHC. It's like giving your body just enough of a challenge to make it stronger.
Okay, and this isn't some, fringe idea. There's solid science here.
Oh, definitely. Significant scientific backing. Remember, back in 2019, 3 doctors, Ratcliffe, Semenza, and Kalin, they actually won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for this.
For discovering how cells adapt to low oxygen situations.
Exactly. That discovery really provides a strong foundation for this whole approach.
So how does it actually work? What's happening inside the body?
Well, at its core, it's leveraging the body's own ability to adapt to stress. It's pretty amazing.
Okay.
One key mechanism involves something called neural plasticity. You have these tiny oxygen sensors in your neck, sensory neurons called carotid body chemoreceptors. Little watchdogs, basically.
Okay, constantly monitoring oxygen.
Right, and when they detect even a modest, repeated dip in oxygen.
Like in these controlled IHC sessions.
Precisely. They signal your brain, and this triggers the release of serotonin, a neurochemical, from specific neurons.
And these neurons then broadcast this signal out.
Yeah, across the brain and the spinal cord.
Wow. Okay, so what does that serotonin release do?
It triggers changes in your motor nerve cells, makes them work better, more efficiently. Researchers call it plasticity.
Right, you mentioned that. Plasticity.
Yeah, it's kind of like they use the analogy of turning up the volume on a stereo so the nervous system can hear its own signals more clearly.
I like that analogy. Makes sense.
And what's even more interesting is this process itself can adapt. It shows metaplasticity.
Meaning the adaptation process gets better over time.
Kind of, yeah. The long-term facilitation itself is plastic or variable. Your body gets better at adapting, like training a muscle. Consistent, smart training makes it stronger.
That's fascinating. Essentially tuning up your own nervous system. What else is going on? I can't just be serotonin, right?
No, definitely not. Beyond that neural plasticity piece, intermittent hypoxia also tweaks the production of nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide. Important for blood vessels.
Exactly. It's crucial for cardiovascular adaptations.
Yeah.
This seems to be linked to benefits like lowering high blood pressure
Okay.
and maybe even increasing bone mineral density, though that's more from animal studies so far.
And I guess this goes even deeper, down to the cells themselves.
Absolutely, you got it. At the cellular level, even temporary low oxygen activates this master genetic switch. It's called hypoxia-inducible factor alpha, HIF1.
HIF1. Okay, a master switch. What does it switch on?
It turns on the production of a whole bunch of protective molecules, things like antioxidants, repair enzymes. Basically, it tells the cell to defend itself and clean up.
And what about the return to normal oxygen? Is that important too?
Oh, absolutely crucial. The reoxygenation part, when you go back to normal or higher oxygen between the low oxygen bursts, that's key.
Why is that?
Well, it comes with a moderate generation of reactive oxygen species, ROS. Now, usually ROS get a bad rap.
Yeah, free radicals, damage.
Right. But in these controlled physiological amounts, they actually act as signaling molecules. They help induce those protective responses we talked about.
So it's not just the stress, it's the recovery from the stress too.
Yeah.
Like a finely tuned cellular workout. Stress, recover, adapt.
You've nailed it. That's a great way to put it. It's this precisely controlled cycle that unlocks the body's repair systems, turns on protective genes, boosts efficiency, a cellular reset.
Okay, so the insight isn't just low oxygen helps, it's how this controlled stress works.
Exactly. And there's even more. We're finding it can influence gene expression epigenetically.
Meaning it can change how genes are read without changing the DNA code itself.
Precisely. By subtly altering the structure around the genes, the chromatin structure, it directly impacts how your body's blueprint gets used.
That's incredible. Complexity is just...
Rah.
Okay, let's talk applications then, because you said the benefits are wide-ranging. Where is this being used or studied? Let's start with the brain and nervous system.
Right. So for people with spinal cord injury, SEI IHC is showing real promise.
How so?
It seems to enhance what's called respiratory neuroplasticity. We're seeing improvements in breathing strength, maximal inspiratory pressure, but also in walking, even hand function in some patients with chronic incomplete injuries.
That could be life-changing for someone with an SEI.
Absolutely. There's actually a clinical trial funded by the Department of Defense looking at combining IHC, like breathing 9% oxygen for a minute, then normal air for a minute, repeated with standard respiratory strength training.
That's fantastic progress. And it's not just SEI, right? You mentioned stroke earlier.
Yes, ischemic stroke. IHC seems to have neuroprotective effects there. It can reduce the size of the infarct, the damaged area,
Okay.
and lessen the injury that happens when blood flow returns, the ischemia reperfusion injury. So it's being looked at as a way to boost the brain's own self-protection, maybe reduce stroke impact, recurrence, disability.
So helping the brain recover. What about improving general brain function or tackling neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's?
That's a really important area. And yeah, the research is encouraging. Some studies show IHC can improve cognitive function in patients who already have mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's.
Specifically things like learning and memory.
Enhanced learning, memory, yes. Increases in spatial cognitive ability, too. And in animal models, we've seen antidepressant-like effects and suppression of neuronal problems caused by hypoxia.
What about other neurological conditions like MS or ALS?
Yes, there's research there, too. For multiple sclerosis, MS, certain hypoxic training protocols have shown positive effects on walking endurance and reducing fatigue.
That's huge for MS patients. Fatigue is a major issue.
It really is. And for ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, specific IHC protocols like 1 minute of low oxygen, 2 minutes of normal, repeated, seem promising for increasing the activity of the muscles you use to breathe in, which is obviously critical for ALS patients.
It's just amazing how these short, controlled oxygen dips seem to boost brain and nerve adaptability across so many different challenges.
It really highlights the potential of tapping into this innate plasticity.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. What about the rest of the body? You mentioned cardiovascular benefits, metabolic health.
Yeah, what's fascinating is that the benefits aren't just stuck in one system. Those same mechanisms we talked about, plasticity, HIF-1, nitric oxide, they seem to have profound effects elsewhere, too.
Like the heart.
Definitely. In animal models of heart attack, myocardial infarction, IHC has been shown to reduce the size of the damaged heart tissue
Wow.
and minimize arrhythmias, those irregular heartbeats. For patients who already have coronary artery disease, it can enhance their exercise tolerance, improve risk factors, lead to a better quality of life.
That's significant.
There's even evidence it can improve outcomes during coronary artery bypass surgery and safely reduce angina symptoms, chest pain, in elderly patients with stable angina. Specific protocols involving cycles of low and even high oxygen have been tested.
And what about high blood pressure? Hypertension. So common.
Very common. And clinical studies show IHC can lead to a significant reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure.
Even in trickier patients, like those with metabolic syndrome.
Yes, even in that group. And that effect seems strongly linked to stimulating nitric oxide synthesis, like we discussed, helping blood vessels relax.
Okay, so that brings us to metabolic syndrome itself. That collection of issues, obesity, high blood pressure, lipid problems. How does IHC fit into that bigger picture?
It's looking like a potentially powerful tool there. IHC, particularly using intermittent hypoxia exposures, IHHE, even just done at rest, seems to be an effective adjuvant therapy.
Meaning something used alongside other treatments.
Exactly, helping to improve those cardiometabolic components. One study, a 3-week program, showed significant drops in blood pressure, total cholesterol, LDL, the bad cholesterol, even liver fat accumulation.
Liver fat, too. That's interesting.
Yeah, and reductions in chronic inflammation markers, improvements in how elastic the arteries were. So, quite a range of benefits.
Which sounds incredibly promising for weight management then, right? Obesity.
It certainly points that way. Even just passive hypoxic exposure without exercise can trigger beneficial adaptations.
But combining it with exercise might be even better.
That's considered a very promising supplementary approach for managing obesity, yes. There was even a study showing just 1 week at high altitude, about 2,650 meters without extra exercise, led to weight reduction.
How? Just being at altitude.
Part of it seemed to be suppression of appetite hormones, like leptin. IHC might also enhance how the body uses fatty acids, reduce body fat percentage.
So it might affect appetite.
There's research suggesting intermittent hypoxia could have an anorexigenic effect, meaning appetite reducing, possibly by influencing the gut-brain axis, impacting brain signals and gut hormones related to fullness.
Fascinating. Okay, one more in this area. Diabetes and insulin resistance.
Another area with positive signs? IHC has shown effectiveness in increasing insulin sensitivity in people with prediabetes.
Making their bodies respond better to insulin.
Exactly. It seems to influence various cellular functions related to glucose and insulin metabolism in key places: the pancreas, liver, fat cells, muscles, all players in insulin resistance.
So it's really systemic. Brain, heart, metabolism.
Yeah.
What about the lungs themselves, the respiratory system?
Good question. For people with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, mild intermittent hypoxia might actually enhance autonomic control over the cardiovascular and respiratory systems.
How would that help?
It could help restore baroflex sensitivity, that's your body's rapid blood pressure control, and boost lung function measures like FEV1 and FVC without causing adverse effects.
And what about sleep apnea? Obstructive sleep apnea, OSAS. That condition itself involves repeated oxygen drops during sleep. It seems counterintuitive to use more oxygen drops.
It does seem paradoxical, doesn't it? But it's a really interesting connection. The idea is that controlled therapeutic IHC might trigger forms of respiratory plasticity that actually increase upper airway stability.
So make the airway less likely to collapse during sleep.
That's the hypothesis. It could potentially reduce the amount of CPAP pressure needed.
CPAP, the main treatment.
Right. And it might also positively affect some of the other health problems often linked with OSAS.
Okay, this sounds like a pretty comprehensive body tune-up. Beyond treating specific diseases, what about just general health, performance, maybe even aging?
Yeah, there's definitely interest there too. IHC can promote greater muscle activity and efficiency. It does this partly by increasing oxidative activity within the muscle cells. That's how they generate energy.
So more endurance, better muscle function.
Potentially, yes. Increased endurance, muscles working efficiently for longer, maybe improved muscle volume and strength. This could lead to rapidly enhanced physical performance for athletes or just generally active people.
And you mentioned anti-aging.
For healthy individuals, it is being considered a potentially powerful anti-aging tool. There's growing scientific evidence supporting that idea, though more research is needed.
Interesting. And bone density.
Animal studies have suggested increases in bone mineral density, which is certainly relevant for aging.
Okay, we've covered a huge range of potential benefits. Incredible stuff. But now let's get real about the practicalities, the considerations, the cautions. This sounds like where it gets truly critical.
Absolutely. This is maybe the most important part. We have to reiterate, the hypoxia is a double-edged sword. The key, the absolute key, is the dose.
Dose makes the poison, or the medicine.
Exactly. The good effects depend critically on the specifics. What oxygen concentration are you using? How is it delivered? Are you alternating with normal air, that's IHNT?
Intermittent hypoxia and hypoxia.
Right. Or are you alternating with higher oxygen levels? That's IHHT or IHHE.
Intermittent hypoxia, hyperoxia.
Yes. And some animal research hints that IHT, the one with higher oxygen in between, might offer even greater protective effects in some cases. And of course, how long are the exposures, how many cycles, it all matters.
So what does this mean for someone listening right now? Can they just, try this?
Absolutely not. That's the crucial takeaway. While the findings are super promising, the optimal IHC protocol is definitely not one size fits all.
It has to be tailored.
It has to be tailored. It varies hugely depending on the specific clinical condition you're targeting, individual factors like other health problems, medications they're taking, overall patient status. It's complex.
And are the benefits permanent?
That's another important point. Often the observed benefits seem to be temporary. They might last Hours, days, maybe weeks.
So like exercise, you have to keep doing it.
That seems likely, yes. It would probably need to be repeated regularly to maintain the benefits, not a one-and-done fix.
Which leads straight to safety. You stressed the dose is key. What are the risks if it's not done right?
The risks are significant. That's why we have to emphasize really strongly. This is still largely an experimental technique. It should not be attempted at home without professional medical monitoring.
Right. Unsupervised use could absolutely be harmful.
Definitely. And there are clear contraindications, reasons someone absolutely shouldn't do it. Poorly controlled heart or respiratory problems, acute infections with fever, epilepsy, certain chronic diseases that aren't stable, pregnancy. These are definite no-goes.
Okay. And what about the research itself? Are there limitations we need to be aware of?
Oh, for sure. We have to be honest about the current state of the science. There's a lot of variation or heterogeneity between the studies that have been done.
Different protocols, different patient groups?
Exactly. Often the sample sizes are quite small. We really need more large-scale, long-term, well-controlled clinical trials to be truly confident about the long-term safety and effectiveness.
And translating animal studies to humans is always tricky, right?
Always. A lot of the preclinical work is done on young, healthy rodents. Applying those findings to older humans, who often have multiple health issues, different daily rhythms, it's a big leap. The effects might vary a lot based on age, sex, other conditions.
So while the potential is exciting, we need more robust human data.
We do. For instance, a meta-analysis looking at cardiovascular patients found IHC seemed safe and effective for reducing heart rate and blood pressure, and it significantly reduced total cholesterol.
Oh, that sounds good.
It is. But the evidence on lowering LDL cholesterol wasn't consistent across all the studies included. Similarly, adding hypoxia to exercise. Sometimes it seems to boost weight loss or glucose control. Other times the evidence is conflicting for certain patient groups.
So still some uncertainty.
Still some areas where the picture isn't totally clear. Things like effects on certain enzymes, like BACE1 involved in Alzheimer's, seem to depend heavily on the exact exposure conditions. And honestly, some studies haven't reported adverse events very well, which makes it hard to get a complete safety picture.
Okay, so proceed with cautious optimism and definitely under expert guidance if considering it clinically.
That's the message. Cautious optimism guided by professionals, and watch for more research.
Right. So to recap, we've taken a really deep dive into intermittent hypoxia today. We've uncovered how this carefully controlled exposure to less oxygen can surprisingly prompt your body to heal and adapt in some pretty profound ways.
Yeah, from improving brain function and recovery to bolstering heart health, helping with metabolic issues, even potentially aiding in weight management.
It really makes you consider the incredible, maybe often untapped plasticity of the human body.
Absolutely. It's not just about recovering from injury. It's about how we can potentially harness these subtle environmental shifts, like precisely controlled oxygen levels.
To fundamentally rewrite our own health story.
Exactly. Which leads to a final thought. What other overlooked environmental cues, maybe like light, temperature, or even pressure, might hold similar keys to unlocking our well-being?
That's a fascinating question to ponder. Something for us all to think about.